I'm Eric with AtlasIED, and in this video we're going to look at the amplified versions of our Atmosphere digital signal platform, the AZMP4 and AZMP8. Around front, these have the looks that you're accustomed to seeing from the Atmosphere products. However, these do have a couple subtle differences. One of them is a power button on the right-hand side of the front. Now, most of the action is around back and in the software, so let's take a look at the back first. Around back, you'll find the same complement of analog inputs, GPIO ports, and accessory bus connectors as the non-amplified AZM4 and AZM8, but instead of the orange balanced line outputs, you'll find larger Phoenix-style connectors suited for Class 2 loudspeaker wiring. We do provide a pair of line-level outputs to supply signal to an external amplifier or listening system, and you'll also notice a set of additional RJ45-style connectors, which we'll talk about in detail later in this video. I'm going to assume you're already comfortable working inside Atmosphere, but if you're new to the platform or you need a refresher, head over to AtlasIED.com/academy. We've got a number of on-demand courses that'll help bring you up to speed. Setting up a zone within an AZMP works the same way as setting up a zone in an AZM processor, but you'll notice that you have the option of selecting amp out or line outputs. Although there are 6 physical outputs on the AZMP4 and 10 physical outputs on the AZMP8, the processing hardware only supports 4 or 8 channels respectively, and you'll not be able to configure a greater number of zones than the processor supports. Let's connect an 8 ohm dummy load to channel 1 and a 70 volt loudspeaker to channel 2. I'm also going to connect a music source to inputs 1 and 2 so we have a live signal to work with. Starting from the top left, you'll see that when you're using more than one amp channel, such as a stereo zone, a zone with a subwoofer, or a zone which includes direct field sound masking, there's an option to select individual amplifier channels to work with. For now, we'll look at channel 1, which has an 8 ohm dummy load connected to it. The status pane shows quick information such as whether the amplifier channel is in standby mode or deep sleep, whether it's exceeded its thermal threshold, or if it's being driven to voltage clipping. In the channel mode pane, you can select the type of load you'll be driving. This sets voltage and current limits for the amplifier's protection circuitry and power sharing technology. You'll notice there's also a sensitivity selection below the load type. This can be thought of as a secondary gain stage between the DSP output and the amplifier input. In most cases, the default setting is appropriate. The 1.4 volt sensitivity just allows more output gain when using consumer audio sources or a dynamic microphone. This pane shows load impedance in real time when a sufficient signal and load is present. During initial setup, this can be a powerful tool for diagnosing faults. For example, if you see a load impedance that's higher or lower than expected, it can indicate a wiring fault or incorrectly tapped constant voltage loudspeakers. In this case, I've connected a 70 volt loudspeaker tapped at 4 watts, which displays a very high impedance and would result in a quieter sound output. When I change the tap setting to 32 watts, the change in load impedance is reflected here, and of course the loudspeaker gets a lot louder. AZMP amplifiers contain 1 or 2 615 watt power modules, each of which contains 4 amplifier channels that can be configured to supply as much or as little power as you choose, between 5 and 600 watts. You may find this useful to allocate more or less power to different zones based on their application, and it can also be helpful as a means to protect low impedance loudspeakers that are going to be driven really hard. Since each power module is independent on an AZMP8, it's not possible to bridge or combine channels to make a single channel with greater than 600 watts. If you need more than 600 watts to a single zone, it's going to be necessary to connect 2 independent home runs to separate amplifier modules or use an external amplifier that supplies the power your application requires. Standby and sleep modes are fairly self-explanatory, but it should be mentioned that systems which include sound masking should ensure that the threshold for auto standby is below the constant masking level to prevent an unexpected disappearance of masking audio within the occupied space. In most cases, you won't need to interact with the diagnostics pane. This can supply information about actual power delivery from the selected amp channel to help with power sharing choices or aid in diagnosing a problem. Finally, a self-test mode is available that can be used to diagnose or monitor the behavior of loudspeakers from within the GUI. This test will first play a broadband pink noise and then a sequence of sine tones at log intervals up to 15 kHz. Be aware that these tones will be played through the connected loudspeakers, so ensure that this is not going to disrupt or alarm occupants of the space in which it plays. At any time, you can cancel the test by pressing the Cancel Test button. After channel impedance tests have been run, they'll display on the test settings page, and you can compare them with previously run tests or even schedule tests to run on their own and email you the results. About those extra RJ45 style connectors, whenever you select SHS or any other compatible AtlasIED loudspeaker from the preset menu, you'll be given the option of utilizing category cabling. This cable you're probably already used to working with just clicks into the back of the loudspeakers with familiar connectors, and because you can use pre-manufactured patch cables, this can be a major labor saver for ceiling installation. Category cable is also able to carry 2 independent channels of audio that can be selected at the individual speaker level, which means you can connect 2 separate zones or 2 direct field masking channels to a single home run, which saves you more money and labor. These RJ45 sockets are relay isolated when not in use, and they automatically limit current based on your selected loudspeaker impedance to prevent wiring failure. One last feature of the AZMP processors I'd like to share with you is the front panel monitor loudspeaker. From within the accessories tab of the Atmosphere GUI or the physical front panel display, you can listen in on the audio entering in any source or playing to any output zone through a small, high-quality loudspeaker hidden behind the air inlet grill. You can use this feature to verify signal clarity, to troubleshoot a misbehaving sound system, or even just to hear some music or announcements while you're working in the AV closet. And with that, now you're an expert at AtlasIED's Atmosphere AZMP technology. If there's anything else you'd like to know, please reach out to us at AtlasIED.com. We'd love to hear from you.